I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. First Friday's free coaching, a confidential group to bring all the questions, vent frustrations, share fears, express doubts. Navigating a new and uncertain reality is hard enough. Let's remove the worry of judgment from others. In this group, I will help you help yourself so that you can be there for your child, family, loved ones, and for you too. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. You must complete the agreement. Welcome to part 2 of my interview with Anita Ervin, Move In Closer. If you haven't already, catch part 1 in episode 140, which aired this past Wednesday.
I remember one time, and the church has a history in the past. They've had other policies come out that have been similarly painful. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's not the focus of this conversation. But I remember at the time, my brother said he always asked himself, where is the love in this policy? Like, where is the love in this? And he could usually find it. And when I read the policy updates, I looked for the love. And I got to be honest, I don't see it. What I see are efforts to make people feel comfortable in their fear and in their judgment towards transgender folks. And I can tell you, if somebody is at church and they do not align with their gender assigned or their sex assigned at birth, they are there either because they want to be or because their parents are making them be there. Those are one of the reasons, but especially if they're adults. And often the youth, they push back hard enough, their parents also won't make them because church is not always a safe place. And as parents, we recognize that when we're parents of LGBTQ kids. And, we're tasked with this twofold thing. Two of my important responsibilities as a parent is, number one, I need to make sure that my child is as safe as I can make them. Now, that doesn't mean I pad them and roll them in bubble wrap and don't let them expose them to anything. That's not what I mean. That means I don't take them into situations that I know are unsafe. I would not, put them in a room full of people spitting poisonous darts at targets when they're not behind protective glass. Like, you just don't do that. And unfortunately, sometimes church can feel that way because people say things and they don't recognize that their comment is piercing somebody's very vulnerable, very tender heart. Yeah. And so I ask my kids to be at church with me because I know that my ward is affirming and loving, and they aren't going to say things that would be hateful or taken in that way.
Or that they would try to avoid them or
they're not going to be othered.
Make a point to walk around them to the other side of the room or avoid talking to them or
they are loved. They are loved in our congregation. And so it's important for me that they come because I want them to feel that community and connection. But the other responsibility we also have as parents is to try to guide or make space for our children to connect with God. Like, we have a spiritual responsibility. And so part of the way that I personally try to meet that responsibility is that I bring my kids to church so they can have communion and community with other faithful people who believe in the same God and can hopefully grow their faith. And so when that community becomes less safe, that sure makes it a lot harder for me as a parent to do my job.
Right. And I just want to acknowledge that your description of your ward is not always the case. And a ward is another word for a congregation, basically your faith community that you meet with regularly. And not all of them are in a place that you describe yours to be.
That is correct. I actually had, and I'll share this because I think it's also relevant to why this policy was so painful. Some months ago, I was talking with somebody from out of state who attends church in a different state, and we were having a conversation about LGBTQ members of the church in general. And their philosophy was that they can come to church, but they shouldn't be allowed to XYZ. And he literally said, because I should not have to explain your effed up kid to my kid.
That is so hurtful. That
So
is
hurtful.
so unbelievably painful and inappropriate, and the antithesis of living a life aligned with
Yeah.
Christ-like unconditional love.
Well, and what was so shocking to me about it is they actually weren't trying to be nasty. We were trying to have a friendly conversation. And I actually had to say, you need to stop referring to my kid as an effed up kid. That's so
Oh,
offensive. Like they just didn't even. And so
I'm so
I,
sorry that
anybody,
happened.
right. So the problem, part of what happens is that people who, um, people in the church who don't have skin in the game, right? They don't have
Mhm.
somebody they love who is trans or who is gender nonconforming. They look at us who do and think, well, you're just being too sensitive. Well, I
Mhm.
want you to know that we read that policy through the lens of our life experience. And our life experience includes people who have done those things. And it's very painful. And sure, I recognize that the people writing that policy in another state, they're probably not sitting here going, how can I hurt these people today? They're not. I
Yeah.
I I will give them the grace of believing that there was no animosity, no ill will behind those
Mhm.
changes. They're probably trying to figure out how to keep people feeling safe at church in general.
Well, that's what I was going to say a little bit ago. When you said you honestly, when you looked at those policies, you did not see the love in them. And I echo your statement. I did not either. And my concern is I feel like really they are aimed to make the majority comfortable, really,
Right.
so that they don't have to challenge their currently held beliefs. A big part of why we're at where we're at is because we love these folks so deeply that are so close to us, and we want to see them, we want to try to understand even if we don't completely, and that's okay, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But I think by extension, our hope, our deepest hope is that those in our faith communities will take those extra steps, as uncomfortable as they might feel,
Hmm.
and try to get to know and really see through what I like to call my eternal eyes. You could call them unconditional love eyes, or the eyes of God.
Hmm.
That's one thing, that having a kiddo who is transgender, you stop looking at the external. The external starts to mean way less, hardly at all,
Right.
because it becomes somewhat ambiguous.
Right.
And you really do have to look on the heart of the
Yeah.
individual.
And that's, I think, one of the hardest things I think about the way the policy's written is that it doesn't give any latitude to local leadership to look at the heart of the individual.
Unless they claim their sovereignty and decide to do so for themselves.
Right. And I recognize that's a really hard thing for leaders, to do that. Like there's this expectation that when you're in leadership in an organization that you're going to align yourself with the leaders,
Mhm.
like the overall leadership of the organization. And I understand that. That's the same in a business
Mhm.
setting as you would have in a faith setting. Is that the people in leadership should be somewhat united, but that's a really I think you're putting bishops in a really, which is what we call a lot of our congregational leaders. I think you're putting them in a tough space when they want to, and I'll use this example. So one of the things in the policy was that you can only attend a gendered Sunday school class according to your sex assigned at birth.
Right.
And, uh, we have every other Sunday a gendered Sunday school class. So again, it just becomes like, well, what if nobody actually cares where they are? But
Mhm.
you've just told me no. So again, it takes away that ability to seek the Lord's guidance
Mhm.
on an individual level to nurture and minister to the one, which is what Christ was all about, was ministering to the one.
The reality is, when somebody is dressing according to the way, like presenting externally
Hmm.
according to the way that they feel on the inside, that they identify on the inside, unless they tell you, most likely you don't know what their assigned sex at birth is. And so if you are having a policy that requires somebody who presents as a traditional masculine look, that they must go to the women's meeting, that's bringing up all kinds of issues
Yeah,
for them, right? To try to explain their life story, especially
right.
if they move to an area that's new, or they're in a congregation where they're not known. That's just, I don't know that folks really are able to see it from their point of view, unless they put forth that effort and realize what position it's putting them in. And the same is true if it were reverse, if it were someone who
Right.
was assigned male at birth and is
Mhm.
dressing outwardly, presenting outwardly what the traditional woman or female would look like. And again, I'm using the word traditional. I hope for one day where all of that's
Just show up and
just
you
wear
be
whatever you
you.
want to wear.
Yeah, you know, and I
um,
I I just feel like people give so much weight. When I say people, I'm speaking in general terms of those who are not close to this space. And actually, let me back this up a little bit more. Was talking with somebody about this. I cried a lot for the first 3 days after the information came out, and I
mhm,
was able to process that pain and get to a place where it wasn't as raw. Although
mhm.
there are still things about it that are very
It's still
painful.
very raw for me.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
gonna
and
lie.
I think it is for a lot of people. And I honor that too. I think
Thank you.
I expect there will be times when it's going to flare up because it's going to be a lot more in my face at the moment for whatever's
Mhm,
going on in my life. But
mhm,
at the moment, it's not something that's flaring up, I'll say. But I was talking to somebody close to me and she said, "Well, the only person I know who's transgender is like your kids. Like I think a lot of people just don't really understand because they're
mhm,
not." And I said, that is the definition of privilege because you don't have to think about it unless you want
mhm,
to. But I'm telling you, there are enough people out and in public spaces and trying to educate you that the reason you're ignorant is your choice, not because the information's not there.
mhm.
And I
Good way to put it.
yeah, and so oh, and there was a point that I was going to make related to that. So I feel like as we, those of us in the church who are trying to stay and help people understand better to make space, it's not as if we're not already trying to have these conversations to help people know better and love better. And so when these kind of things happen, it's another layer of hurt because not
Mhm,
only has there been more barriers to participation put up, but it's like we're being dismissed. Like
mhm,
there's actually not space for you here.
mhm. It's like it's a clear message at that point. And
Yeah.
I realized we probably should have done this from the get-go. You mentioned one of the ways the policy affects transgender individuals is they're required to go to the class
Hmm.
that is
Right.
what's the
Assigned
word?
to the sex
To the
assigned at birth,
class that is
aligned to
their
with their sex assigned
assigned
at birth.
sex at birth. And then it also applies to the use of restrooms within the building,
Yes.
that you cannot use the restroom that you identify with. You need to use the restroom that
Well,
is aligned with your sex
right. Well,
assigned
and
at
actually, it
birth.
goes a step further. It says that you have to use a single occupancy restroom if available. Now, I don't know about
Okay.
you, but my church doesn't have one unless you're 3 years old and in this tiny little class because it literally is a foot off the
No,
floor.
no,
So
you
I
do
don't
not.
have a single occupancy restroom. So that's the
Hmm.
first thing you're supposed to do. And if that's not available, then you're supposed to talk with your leaders to figure out an appropriate solution, which could include using the restroom, as you just said, with your sex assigned at birth, which, by the way, if you are transitioned, you're going to shock some people if you walk into that restroom,
Yeah.
um, or find a
I just
trusted
don't see
friend.
any,
Yeah,
sorry.
or you can find a trusted friend to stand outside the door to make sure you're
Hmm.
in there alone.
But I don't believe that part is written into the
It is.
policy.
It is. It's on the attachment, the resources for local leaders.
Wow.
It says that these are viable options if you can't use the single occupancy restroom.
So
Uh,
all I remember is an email came out like a day or two after I saw this
mhm.
all over social media. You had to scroll down to the bottom of the email, and that's where the link to the updates specifically
Yeah,
regarding
it's
transgender
guiding
members.
principles. Yeah, guiding principles for local leaders. And
And
it's
it's important to keep clicking
yeah,
on the links to get
yeah,
to the full information because it's not immediately readily available.
right, right. And so yeah, there's a lot of, and I will say there's other things I find, and I try to be careful not to pick apart the policies. I will just say that there's other things in there that I find really difficult to swallow,
Hmm.
that I feel like send a message of suspicion and distrust,
Hmm.
such as not being able to serve in callings with
Right.
children or as
Or
teachers.
go to overnight activities like camps and whatnot.
You have to go, I think the way it's written is you have to go with your sexist. So if it's like a gendered camp, so like young men's or young women are going to camp, you
Hmm.
could go with your sex assigned at birth. But if it's a co-ed camp, you can't stay the night. So if my kid's going to a youth conference that's 2 hours away, it puts
Hmm.
the burden on me as a parent to drive out there. pick them up at the end of the day in activities, and find a place for them to sleep, whether I rent a hotel, whether we drive home, whether, and financially that's a burden, time-wise that's a burden. And what it really is it excludes a whole group of kids from being able to participate.
For me, what bothers me so much about that is it ignores the fact that even those that are identifying in a heterosexual or gender way, if they want to participate in certain activities that most religions don't deem appropriate, right? At that age, in a co-ed youth conference or camp sort of way, they're going to figure out a way. If their intention is to be sexually active or whatever the case might be, they're going to figure out a way. What really bothers me is policies like these are throwing this blanket assumption, this blanket statement that that's how this group of people just are. And so we have this need to protect everyone else. And it's just simply inaccurate. It is so not fair, not okay, not true.
Right.
And to limit those in leadership positions those who are adults from leadership positions, same type of implied assumption. And yet we know of instances where there have been individuals who identify in a heterosexual or gender way where abuse has occurred, sometimes even on church property. And yet there's no policy that I'm aware of.
Yeah. And it was
that
actually
addresses
funny.
that.
Yeah. I had a friend, talk with me anyway, ask me some things. We are friends that discuss things in a very respectful, courteous way, but our opinions don't always align. But I appreciate the conversation because I feel like it allows me to make sure that I'm checking myself. Like, am I really trying to be fair to all sides, et cetera? Anyway, my point is, it was funny because he said, well, statistically, and he was like, does it matter such and such? And I said, if we made church policies based on statistics, white men couldn't do anything in this church. Because if you look at the sex offenders, like 96% are men and 56% of those are white. So, I mean, it's not statistics. We already have, I want to be clear about this. We already have protections in place to protect our children. Every class has to have 2 leaders in it. If a young child goes to the bathroom, like during class, a teacher has to stand outside the door while they're in there. Not like in the bathroom. They're supposed to stand in the hall outside the door and make sure that child is able to go in and out safely. We already have protections in place for children. And it's because there's no guarantee that just because someone is cisgender or a heterosexual that they're not going to, cause problems. I mean, it does happen. And so hopefully most people are not that way, but we don't know. So we just put things in place to protect our kids. That is important. And it's important to me. So I'm not saying that you can be, and I'll be honest, I also appreciate the fact that there are people who, parents feel like they shouldn't have to explain to their 5-year-old why parents don't know how to talk about gender identity to young kids in a way that doesn't feel threatening. So I honor their discomfort also. Like, I recognize that now, do I think that they should stay there? No, I think you should learn how to talk about it in a better way.
I honor it too.
But
and
I recognize it
to step into the discomfort and figure out a way through it.
Yeah. Because what I found is I thought I was protecting my kids all those years. And what I was doing was actually making them afraid.
Do any of these sound like you? You're feeling inner turmoil and not quite sure of the source. Your job or finding a new job or career in midlife is hard. You freeze up when asked about your thoughts on hot button topics or any topics. You find menopause is affecting your brain, meaning your memory isn't quite what it used to be. You're lacking in self-confidence at work or other areas of life. You have unresolved feelings of anger, betrayal, or lack of trust. You don't give yourself permission to have dreams, wants, or even needs. You're not feeling settled or safe sharing about where you are in your faith journey. You can't quite put a finger on who you are and what you want in life. You're scared or worried to talk to others about these topics. You're struggling with feelings of anxiety or sadness or both. You're feeling a little lost as you try to blaze your own trail forward. You feel like you have no control over where your life trajectory seems to be going, and you have difficulty verbalizing what is going on inside. If any of these sound like you're in the right place. I invite you to join me for Unlocking Your Voice 3-day shift. This will give you a taste of my upcoming hybrid group coaching program. What is Unlocking Your Voice? When it comes to speaking your mind, sharing what is on your heart, offering your opinions or sharing your thoughts, Ask yourself, where's your volume level tuned to? Volume refers to the degree of loudness or intensity of a sound. It is also a measure of regions in a space occupied within the boundaries of a three-dimensional solid, or length, width, and height. Think cube-like. Join me for 3 days as I introduce you to the 3 keys that lead to at least 3 shifts needed to unlock your voice, needed to increase the intensity or loudness of your volume. These 3 keys are core values, emotional resilience, and identity work. In other words, learning to identify and then separate yourself from the stories you've created around the circumstances of your life. All those participating in the 3 days mini course get access for free to the first day, the Jumpstart session of my 14-week hybrid course, Unlocking Your Voice, on September 19th. Click the link in the show notes to register, which will also give you the links to the virtual Zoom meetings, as well as the link to the free Facebook group. Reinforcing those gender binaries.
Well, not just that, but then when they started experiencing things that didn't align with that, they wondered if I would love them. Mm-hmm. They didn't see a place for them with God, the God that they had been taught. I created walls that they were not prepared to scale because of the way that I taught my faith and the way that I taught my children. So when we can learn how to talk better to kids at younger ages and to make space, we don't know what their life experience is going to be like. Yeah. But when we can make space, we create safety for them because they don't feel like they have to hide who they are to be allowed to participate.
I feel impressed to add to that this idea that, well, you mentioned how you honor that parent who isn't quite sure how to navigate this conversation with a young child. I was blind to this until I wasn't. Mm-hmm. But anybody who thinks that a person who identifies anywhere in the LGBTQ plus community is choosing it, I invite them to really ponder, why would somebody choose something that they know is going to bring a whole list of, lack of opportunity, of judgments, of exclusions, of discrimination upon themselves.
Right.
And for anybody who might believe that somehow exposing their child to a same-sex couple, right, holding hands or kissing or whatever, a couple that identifies and presents and practices in any way outside of that hetero norm that they're so used to, anybody who thinks that that would influence their child to choose that way of life, I invite you to think about the reverse. Think about how many times adults in the presence of children, I'm talking like your traditional hetero couple, even leaders up on the stand who will take their wives, by leaders, I'm referring to a male leader, and put their arm around them, hold their hand, maybe hug them. They're doing that in front of the congregation. Maybe it's not in a church setting. Maybe it's in a neighborhood setting or in a community type setting at a school, or a park or library or whatever. Our kids were exposed to that as well. Did that make them just all of a sudden decide or choose, I'm going to identify in this hetero way? I mean, that's not the thought process that anybody goes through.
Well, and I
but
think
the concept is what I'm trying to bring across.
Right. And I think that something that's unique to this gender identity space is that I feel like society-wide, we have pretty much, most people have recognized that your orientation is not a choice. To them, gender identity still feels like a choice, that you're choosing to put those clothes on. You're choosing to ask for a different name. But I would assert that they don't know what's happening on the inside. They don't know how that person feels having to live a life in this body that feels foreign and awkward and strange. And just like we are not in a position to judge somebody for choosing to not remain celibate and single and alone when they are attracted to the same sex or same gender, we are not in a position to judge somebody who chooses to live authentically, because we don't know the pain that comes from having to hide who we are. It is a big ask. And I think we need to honor what we're asking these folks to do rather than saying, well, it's a choice. They could always just put on a dress for Sunday, or they could always just put on a tie for Sunday. I'm telling you as a parent, this is not just about helping our children feel seen and loved. It is also about keeping them alive so that they can get to the point of their life where they can figure out who they are and who they're going to be. That is a real battle that parents are fighting
Yes, it is.
And often it feels like we're fighting alone.
And policies like these actually just add more to that battle.
Yeah.
It adds more for us to wade through, contend, try to help others see. And sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not.
Right.
And I honestly believe God does not care what we wear on our bodies. It is a social construct. Think about how many biblical paintings or depictions show men in dresses.
Well, even something like makeup. I mean, come on, people. Makeup. First of all, some people look really good in guy liner. I'm not going to lie. Like, people wear makeup all the time. Like, it is such a social construct. But
Mm-hmm. A
when did
lot
we
of people in
decide that only women,
showbiz.
when did we decide that only women could wear makeup?
Right.
Like a beauty make. And so I guess it's just one of those things that like, do you really think that God is so shallow? He's going to shut somebody out because they have long hair or
Mm-hmm.
because they like to wear nail polish or
Or they
because
have
they want to wear
piercings.
a tie to church? Yeah. We create those rules because we're trying to feel comfortable,
Yeah.
not because we're trying. And the
Right.
challenge I think of especially Christianity, but every religion, I think the challenge that we have been given is to be the kind of people that love as God loves. When we read the Bible, we talk about charity. Charity is the pure love of Christ. If I am looking at somebody and judging them for what they look like on the outside, that is not the pure love of Christ. And so what I have found on this faith journey is this being on this side of it, where all of a sudden the checklist doesn't have the weight that it did.
Mm-hmm.
Not only am I able to love my child more purely, but I realize how much God loves me.
Yeah.
It's
You
never been a
really
matter of whether I was good enough to
you
be
really
loved.
learn a lot about love in this
Yeah.
journey. You realize you thought you understood it somewhat anyway.
Mm-mm. So would I trade this? I mean,
Mm-mm.
I'll be honest. I wish there's a part of me that wishes I would love for all my kids to be cisgender and heterosexual. And it's because I feel like life would be easier for them. They would probably wish to be cisgender and heterosexual because then they can fit in with societal norms. They don't have to deal with the judgment. But I remember there was a part of me that realized that that thinking in my mind was because I thought, oh, well, then they can live happily ever after. Well, who do you know that is cisgender and
Mm-hmm.
heterosexual
Yeah.
who has been miserable in abusive relationships or various other heartache? There is no guarantee. In fact, this is the opposite. There is a guarantee that your life is going to be hard,
Yeah.
every single person. And so once I realized that that desire I had, I just want them to be straight
Yeah.
and whatever, it was because I just wanted their happiness. Well, that wasn't ever guaranteed. So once I
Yeah.
recognized that, I could realize that was shallow. What I long for, what I really want for them is to feel connection and belonging.
Yeah.
That that is what I want for them. And I am fighting for space for my kids to feel that in my community, in my family, and in my faith community.
Yeah, I believe the happily ever after idea is it's a story that we tell ourselves, that society has told us, society has communicated through literature, movies, books, whatever. And it's maybe this ideal that humankind has desired or wanted or tried to put the front that that's what's going on for our family because of what you just said. Life is hard, but living in a non-reality, telling yourself something that's not really happening, that all that does is that makes us sick. It makes us ill physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Right.
You cannot live against what is going on inside your heart, your mind, your body, your soul. You can't. It will make an individual ill. And that includes trying to live this facade, inside of this place within you that is it's not true. It's a made up story.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the irony is folks that identify in this community are actually trying so hard to do the opposite of that. This is their truth. This is how they feel and how they identify. And they just want the same things that we do. They're
Yeah.
human at the heart of it. They want love. They want belonging and acceptance. In my work with my clients, I always encourage looking inward. Belong to yourself first, right? Fitting in is you're trying to look like those around you, act like those around you, be like those around you. Belonging starts from within.
Right.
That's where the work is.
Yeah.
But it's worth it and it's rewarding and it's long term. If there's anything more that we haven't touched on that you would want to leave with those that are listeners, and not just parents of LGBTQ plus kids or transgender youth or young adults, but to anyone, how to be a better ally, how to try to see them, hear them, let them know you are trying, what would that be?
Well, I think I would invite them to move closer. I'm reminded of something my oldest said when they first came out as trans. They're like, I don't want to be treated like a trans person. I just want to be treated like a person. And so, when you think of somebody, just think of a random person in your life that you love. When you think about that person, let's say I'm thinking about my husband. Well, of course, I think about my relationship first. I think about that. But I think about who he is as a person. I don't think about his orientation. I don't think about his gender identity. I think about the fact that he really likes this food or this hobby or loves to read or he does all the laundry or like I think of so much more about him. And I think sometimes, even as allies,
Mm-hmm.
we get trapped into thinking about somebody first is their gender identity or their orientation because it's something different. It's something out of the norm. And while I appreciate someone making the extra effort to treat somebody well when they are gender nonconforming or have some sort of LGBTQ identity, I appreciate what they're trying to do. But let's remember that that is a small component of who they are as a whole person.
Mm-hmm.
They have interests, they have things
Right.
they enjoy, they have talents and skills and big hearts. And that should be how you think about them first.
Yeah.
Their identity in terms of gender and orientation, it's like their hair color, it's like their eye color. It's just a
Right.
part of them. They didn't
Part of their
choose it.
DNA.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just they didn't this is who they are. But take a step back and treat them like a whole person that they are. And don't be afraid to ask appropriate questions
Mm-hmm.
like, what pronouns do you want me to use? Don't ask the invasive, like, so are you going to have
Right.
surgery? Like,
If it's
yeah,
not something you would feel comfortable
I don't
being
know.
asked.
Yeah, like I don't know, are you on birth control? Like you just don't talk to people about their private
Yeah.
medical stuff. So yes, but curiosity or kind questions out of trying to be more respectful, like how can I show up in your life to make
Yeah.
you feel comfortable?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Now let's talk about the other things we always talked about that
Yeah.
made our connection matter,
Right.
you know.
Right. Those are all amazing, perfect suggestions. And I might add, if there are spaces that you see your transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming, and then I'll include anyone in the LGBTQ plus community. If there are spaces you see them being excluded from or asked to leave from, I invite you to leave with them, to be and stand in solidarity with them and walk. That is truly walking that path with them, mourning with those that mourn. I really believe that. I believe that's what Jesus Christ would do. I believe he would go to the places he did, actually.
He ministered to people.
In the margins.
Yep.
That were cast out.
Yeah. So,
Anita, this has been amazing and therapeutic, a little heartbreaking,
yeah.
but overall a good conversation. And I really appreciate you being willing to engage in this. These are not easy topics. These are not easy subjects. This is not an easy space to occupy.
No.
The last question I always like to ask my guests, the title of the name of my podcast is Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I purposely dropped the A, trying to adjust our view of this word doubt. It's a good thing. Get rid of this negative connotation attached to it. So I ask you, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
I think for me, it means that I think live is the operative word. I'm not defined by my doubts. I'm not defined by my questions. They're just part of my story now, and it doesn't have to break everything in my life because I had doubts or questions.
For sure. I love that so much. You are the first person ever to focus on the word live. That is perfect. I love that.
Well, I feel like I should get a sticker or something.
So good.
So,
Well, to kind of wrap up on a lighter note, I'm just going to throw out some fun questions for us to get to know you better. I'm just looking for 1 to 2 word answers. That's it. Tell us if you have a favorite book or one that you're reading currently.
Well, I think my all-time favorite is going to be Persuasion by Jane Austen. I love that book.
That's a fun one. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I have come to realize in my old age, I'm in my late 40s, that I am
You're
an
not old.
I know, I'm joking. I'm kind of an ambivert. So people think I'm an extrovert, but it doesn't recharge my batteries. I actually need downtime alone for that. So I'm really good at
Yeah.
socializing, but not all the time.
Yeah, I hear that. And who is your favorite artist?
Like music artists, song artists.
You pick whichever.
Oh, that's a hard one. It depends on the day, honestly. So I would probably default to music, but if you have not listened to this song, I will say the one that's really been on my heart lately, it's a song by Shinedown and it's called A Symptom of Being Human. And my kids are so tired of it because I listen to it all the time, but to me, it speaks so much to this path that we all walk, where we often feel like we're on the outside, not invited to the party, but we're all there. And so we'll say what's funny is I don't actually like a lot of Shinedown's music, but I
Okay.
do love this song. So
Beautiful.
no short answers, sorry.
That's okay. Are you a night owl or a morning lark?
Mm, Night owl by preference, morning lark by situation.
And do you have a celebrity crush?
I don't think I do. I don't think I do.
Oh,
There's a
girl,
lot of
you got to
people I
get
like to look at. Well, I'll say the joke in my family is I'm like, ooh, they are very talented, and so that's my answer.
That's funny.
So there's various people I'm like, ooh. When I think of people that are just, yeah, I don't know. There's people I know I don't like, but I won't throw shade on those folks.
Won't
But
mention those. That's fine.
yeah,
And do you do still or carbonated water, or are you a diet soda fan?
I like still water. And
Mhm.
if I really need caffeine, then I will have Diet Dr. Pepper.
I like that too. And
Mhm.
finally, the furthest place you've traveled.
Well, I was born in the Middle East in Bahrain, so I
What?
don't
I did
remember
not
it.
know that
Yeah,
about you.
my dad was in the Navy, so all my fun travels happened before I was 2 years old, and I don't remember any of it. But in as an adult, the furthest place I've traveled was probably California. I've been there to visit, and I'm in Ohio, so I have been from
That's
the East Coast
almost,
to the West Coast.
yeah. And it's a lot of coasts. It's a lot of
Yeah,
space in between.
it is.
Well, Anita, if folks wanted to connect with you, can you share with them how they can connect with you and reach
Yeah.
out with questions or whatever?
Sure. I actually started a channel or an Instagram profile, if you will, some earlier this year at the recommendation of someone very dear to me, and it's called Parenting in the Wilderness with underscores between all the words.
Okay.
Um, and that's a great way to reach me. It's a public profile, and if I get messages on there, I do respond, and I'll post little reels and things with just some thoughts that
Yeah, they're really
about this.
informative.
Thank you. Yeah,
They're really helpful.
I feel like it's almost more therapeutic for me than anyone else
Hmm.
because I'm the one that has
Right?
to articulate the things that I'm
Hmm.
trying to, that are on my mind. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's the best
that
way to reach me.
resonates. Well, thank you again so
Thanks
very
again.
much. So appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and for putting yourself out there and sharing so much of your heart and your story along with your family. So thank you.
Thanks, Megan. I appreciate it.
Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.